Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. It is on. It is on. How are you today? Thursday, August 27th. Lots going on today. We hope you're well. We hope you're safe. We hope that you are staying peaceful and minimizing stress in these crazy times. COVID-19 that got us twisted up out here, folks. Lots going on. Shoot, the NBA got playoffs in a bubble, although they did, walk out and protest of the shooting of Jacob Blake out there in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and a lot of other sports leagues are following suit. Did you see Kenny walk off with the TNT set with Charles and Shaq and Ernie? That was really, really something. The sports leagues, Major League Baseball, all of that, they're reacting. Just so much going on in our country right now. Republicans having their convention going on, and the Democrats had theirs early on. Let's see what happens. I guess the bottom line is, no matter what side of the fence you are on, we all need to get out there and vote. Something needs to change around here. That's what I think. And that's why we're here at Coffee Conversations with Greg J, to provide information and inspiration to the peoples. That's what we're doing. While we probably should be all up in the protest and all of that right now, we are actually just pausing to look at our households today and look and make sure that in the event of disasters, in the event of straight up destruction in our communities, that you are prepared, you're ready. Anything could happen. You could have an earthquake out here in California. We could have fires. We could have, storms. You look at the headlines right now, and among the top of your headlines are hurricanes are hitting down there, down south, and just all over the nation. You see, disasters happening. And so today we want to just kind of take a moment and talk to the village a little bit about how to keep yourself safe, how to keep yourself prepared, in the event of a disaster. A couple years back, I was putting together an emergency preparedness expo at my church, right? And during the time of doing that, we were touring and talking to the authorities, the Emergency Operations Center, and all this. And, we learned a pretty profound thing. So in our communities, just as an example, so disaster strikes, right? There's going to be some time before the folks could get to us and help us and get us out of there or whatever. It's going to be a minute. So we need to be prepared to bridge that gap before help gets to us in the event of, traumatic event that happens here. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. Just think about this, you guys. Your grocery store, just as an example. So the distribution centers for these grocery stores are basically way the heck out in, Irwindale, out in the outlying areas. And those of you who aren't in our Southern California region, it's probably the same. A lot of urban centers, but the distribution centers for the grocery stores are so far away. It's going to take them a minute, a couple of days, maybe a week or more to get some food into our area. So, just think about that. That's the breadth and depth of what kind of damage and halting of our infrastructures could happen in the event of a disaster. Some friends of mine, some experts, as you know how we do it, Coffee Conversations, got experts in these different fields that we discuss. I'm just an observer of the community, somebody who wants to share information with you always about how we should live our life, what do we need to be aware of, and we just want to keep you all safe. So before I bring my guest on today, let's get to the news headlines of the morning. There's a lot. So we're just going to rush through these real quick. Two Black-owned banks, City First in Washington, D.C., and Broadway Federal Financial Corporation in Los Angeles, announced that they've entered into a transformational merger of equals agreement that creates the largest Black-owned bank in the nation with more than $1 billion in combined assets under management and approximately $850 million in total depository institution assets. Tens of thousands are expected to gather Friday at the Lincoln Memorial to commemorate the historic 1963 Civil Rights March on Washington. The demonstration was taking place on the 57th anniversary of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic I Have a Dream speech, and it seeks to restore and recommit to the dream Dr. Martin Luther King defined in that year. We're going to have a special edition of Coffee Conversations on tomorrow to speak with our West Coast representative of Reverend Al Sharpton's National Action Network. And they're going to be live from Washington, D.C., and we're going to discuss that. So it's going to be a special edition tomorrow. Coffee Conversations, look out for it. You know, National Action Network began planning the march in partnership with the NAACP and others after he announced the event during George Floyd's funeral in June. The announcement came at the height of nationwide protests against police brutality and racial injustice, spurred by the police killing of George Floyd, who died in late May after the police officers knelt on his neck. Al Sharpton and Martin Luther King III, a son of the late civil rights legend, are expected to participate in the event. The Chicago Defender reports that former President Barack Obama is speaking out against Donald Trump's actions to withhold money for the post office, which is sure to have a significant negative impact on the elections. Trump is accused of withholding election aid for states and an emergency bailout for the United States Postal Service in order to restrict how many Americans, particularly Black Americans, can vote by mail. Considering nearly 180 million Americans are eligible to vote by mail, Trump's moves could cause widespread delays, long lines, and voter disenfranchisement come November, an issue that already gravely impacts Black people. Trump continues his claims that mail-in ballots are responsible for widespread election fraud, although investigations don't bear that out. President Obama suggested that early voting is the best way to ensure that your vote counts. Hurricane Laura made landfall early this morning in southwestern Louisiana as a Category 4 storm. It slammed the coast with a maximum sustained winds of 150 miles an hour. Whew. The National Hurricane Center says Laura is the strongest hurricane to hit the U.S. this year. The storm knocked out power to hundreds of thousands of people, and video showed road signs bending and large vehicles being flipped over. Laura weakened to a Category 2 hurricane within hours of making landfall and is expected to continue to weaken quickly and become a tropical storm later in the day. Remnants of Laura are expected to reach some inland states. Flash flood warnings are issued in Arkansas. Heavy rainfall is predicted in Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky later in the week. Police have arrested a white 17-year-old gunman for allegedly killing 2 people during the third night of unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The killings happened early yesterday morning in demonstrations against the police shooting of Jacob Blake. The suspect is reportedly an Illinois resident who described himself as a member of a local militia, and video of the suspect walking around freely with a semi-automatic rifle just before the shootings has sparked criticism of the Kenosha Police Department. Those of you that are using TikTok, the CEO quit. Kevin Meyer announced in a memo that he's leaving the company after only taking the position in May. President Trump issued an executive order earlier this month that would ban the app in the U.S. if it wasn't sold by its parent company. Meyer said, "I understand that the role that I signed up for, including running TikTok globally, will look very different as a result of the U.S. administration's action to push for a sell-off of the U.S. business. The company's general manager will take over as interim CEO." These and other headlines on Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. Lots of stuff to talk about. Ooh, that hurricane, man. You know, if you could just imagine what's going on there. That's why we're here talking about, emergency preparedness. What if the disaster hits? So I've got 3 gentlemen here who are going to join us in a conversation. We're just going to sip our coffee and chit chat about, hey, how do we be prepared for Is your household prepared? Look around. Is your household prepared? Those of you who have been looking and listening to beachcityradio.com, thank you so much for that. But you've also been hearing an announcement voiced by Wendy Raquel Robinson, who's asking you the question, are you prepared? And when we began that initiative, I began to think about, this is a very important conversation that we need to have for our community. And so I started reaching out to my friend Chin, who you're going to hear from in just a minute, and got introduced to some top dogs in the LA County Fire Department, got introduced to some other top dogs in the Long Beach Fire Department. So look, we're about to be safe around here. Ladies and gentlemen, let's see, Captain Ron Harrelson. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Brother Chin, are you there? Uh-oh, we're having a little audio problem. We'll bring him in just a hot second there. I see Jake Heflin there, Long Beach, LBC represented. How you doing today? All right, good stuff. Good. Guys, man, it's a crazy time we're living in. I'm sure you all are pretty busy, just generally speaking, in this whole, pandemic thing. But we wanted to just take a moment this morning to chat to the people about how to keep their homes safe if they're prepared, in the event of a huge disaster. Are we ready? You know what I'm saying? And so let's talk a little bit about that. Ron, let's start with you there. We chatted briefly yesterday, and I'd like for you to share with the people, when you go on a call, what do you kind of notice? I thought it was interesting how you say, hey, you go in to help grandma, and then you look around the place, and what do you see?
Well, Greg, first of all, you mentioned community in your opening, and that's key. We've got so many people involved all over the city, Long Beach, LA City Fire, all the agencies, so that care and that support is there. But when we talked yesterday, I shared a story with you just of, I've been doing this 28 years. And when you go on a call, and it's a medical call, and you're sitting there and you're hearing that beep of the smoke detector, and the battery's getting low and nobody's changing it, or even looking up and seeing that battery, the door of that smoke detector open and no battery in it because they've taken it out because that sound is annoying. Those are concerning because we know, and Jake can attest to this, that smoke detectors save lives. So we have to continue with that education. We have to continue to provide smoke detectors to the public and inform them to make sure that they're good.
All right, Jake, now in our beautiful city of Long Beach here, where Coffee Conversations originates to the globe, right here from the LBC. Now, what do you see when you're going out when you're running around the community, and how can we in Long Beach be best prepared for a disaster?
Well, I think really to Ron's point, it really starts with little small, simple steps that make a big difference. And I think when we look at it from our perspective with the fire department, whether it's making sure that you have an operating smoke detector and that you check your batteries and make sure that that annoying chirp is addressed and just not ignored. It goes from just that little small simple step to just having a conversation with a family member about where your safe meeting place is outside the home. For instance, if you had a fire in your house, where is the family going to go and meet outside the house to make sure everyone's accounted for? And that can't happen when the disaster strikes, right? It has to happen before the disaster strikes. So a conversation is a simple thing to have, but we just don't have it because we think it's never going to happen to me. We don't need to worry about that. But it is. The reality is it can happen to you. And depending upon the significance and the history of these events, right, we know that history tends to repeat itself. That's why we know that Long Beach is vulnerable for earthquakes, because we had it happen in 1933. And it changed the building codes for that matter around the whole country. We have pre-33 construction and post-33 construction, which talks about masonry. And that was because of the Long Beach earthquake. So when we start talking about our vulnerabilities, structure fires we're vulnerable for structure fires. And so when we look at this, it's these types of things that we need to do to make a difference tomorrow. And I think that's why this becomes so important for us. The other things is I think it's the idea of getting alerts and knowing what to do when those alerts happen. I mean, it could be a simple thing as, for instance, in Long Beach, signing up for Alert Long Beach. You can go to our website, www.longbeach.gov, and sign up for these alerts. You can also sign up for, you want to obviously talk about making a plan to protect your people. And I think that really gets down to this idea of having a fire safety plan and what that looks like, or getting out of the home and having a conversation with your kids about the fact that smoke rises. And so the safe place to be is down on the ground. And we teach that in our third grade education program, but it makes a big difference if we can have those conversations and reinforce that at home. And I guarantee a lot of parents don't think about this, but even closing your child's door at night can create extra time for them to get out. And it prevents the spread of fires. Closed doors save lives. And so those are some of those other things. I know 4 or 5-year-old kids don't like to have the door closed. Leave the door open while you're awake, but when you go to sleep, close their door. There's another part of that too. When you are leaving the house, for instance, if there was a fire and their door is still closed, there's a good chance they're still in that room. If their door is open, there's a good chance that they're hopefully at that safe meeting place that you've driven into their head, that's where they're going and waiting for you to get out to. And then the other thing is get to safety with the things you need. And this really gets into this discussion about what's happening now with the fires throughout the state. We have massive, unprecedented evacuations going on that are displacing thousands and thousands of people. And it's also making sure that when you are evacuating, that you're taking some of those critical, essential needs that you will have to help support you through that difficult time. And then there is also this other conversation about staying safe at home when you can't leave. Now, there's that fine balancing act as far as when there's an evacuation order, you got to get out. It's really important that you take those things seriously. But if you are going to stay there, for instance, an earthquake happens and you're staying at home and you're sheltering at home, obviously making sure that you're doing that safely as well, and then helping your friends and neighbors get ready. And that is really about conversation. And this is all part of a new campaign that's happening statewide right now called Listos California. And many of these different agencies and jurisdictions are participating in that. And we want to encourage people to really visit listoscalifornia.org for additional information about this campaign. And there's a lot of great literature, not only on that website, but also on ready.gov for FEMA. And again, September is National Preparedness Month. So the timing of this conversation can be better.
Well, that's why we have actually created this, because we were working with Listos California to inform people of what they what they could do to be prepared, to try to stimulate some awareness there. And that's actually what sparked the idea for me. It's like, hey, I have friends out there that can come out here and let's really dig down to the meat of the matter. Now, let me try to bring Chin back in here and see if he is available. Hey, Chin, you there? All right. Well,
I am here if you can hear me.
Okay, we can hear you, sir. All right, good stuff. Listen, Chin, so you are the coordinator of Cert in the South Bureau, and thank you so much. You were the first person that I reached out to when we wanted to come and bring this illustrious panel together and discuss, emergency preparedness, because we worked together and put on a fantastic expo out there at West Angeles Church up in Los Angeles. Now, tell us a little bit, what is Cert? There's somebody out there right now saying, Cert, what is that? The breath mint? What is that? What is Cert?
Chin, you there?
The community response team. And
so he said community emergency response team. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. And basically what it is, it's a program that started in LA City in 1985. It was the brainchild of a LA City Fire Department chief who knew that emergency services would become overwhelmed. Major disaster like an earthquake, or something like that, and they wanted to know.
We're having a hard program. Hey, Chin, we're having a hard time with your connection here. So let me do this for you. I'm going to send you a chat, and I'm going to move over to Ron, and maybe he can pick up where you left off and describe that. We're going to let me just go offline with you and chit chat about how to restore your connection here.
And Chin's been doing a great job at the Cert program, Community Emergency Response Teams. That program has taken off, and it's spread throughout Southern California and all over. So incredible work there. We talk about community. That's exactly what it takes, because as you mentioned, Greg, we're going to be overwhelmed. Resources initially, we'd like to be at every house, but we can't. So that's where it's incumbent upon the community to be prepared, to have access and understand their skill sets to where they can make a difference and they can help us out. And that's in the form of being EMTs, documentation, having supplies, some of those basic skill sets really, really come in handy. And it starts with the individual. It starts with that individual caring enough to say, you know what, I want to do more. And that's it. When they say that, and we give them the information, we provide them with the training, you watch them flourish, you watch them take off, and they're key, they're critical. They're kind of that 1-2 punch with us, with the first responders. So when they're up and running, it's an incredible asset to us, and it does buy them time, if you will.
So let me ask you this, Captain Ron. Listen, let me just ask you this. So when you are, so how does the official LA County and even in Long Beach, how do the fire departments intersect with organizations like Cert?
Well, that starts with the training. That starts with having them in set regions and areas and available, and being able to access them and initiate that. A lot of the training, when I was in Battalion 1 over in Ladera Heights area, a lot of that training there, we knew the locals who were certified and trained, because we did a lot of the training out of the station at the station level. So we have a database, we have access to them. There's a network. They know when to activate, when they're needed. There are set trainings throughout the year. Some of them are large scale, where we simulate maybe an earthquake or a terrorist event where we've got multiple victims, an MCI, if you will. So that's when we keep their skills sharp. It helps to keep our skills sharp, and it's a coordinated teamwork, and it works well.
Now let me ask you, so both of you guys, I know a job like yours, you're constantly training, constantly preparing for, whatever may come and all that there. And I think it was you, Ron, or I might have been Roland Spruill I was talking to yesterday, one of you guys. And you mentioned in the conversation, so you're deploying people up to Northern California to help with the fires. How does that happen in your world? And then how do you maintain a balance of personnel? What if something happens here while all the guys and ladies are up in Northern California? Jake, you want to take that one?
Well, I think the beauty of the statewide master mutual aid system is the fact that we can help areas that are impacted by disaster. Just like we would have a large scale event here, we're going to get those resources from Northern California and throughout the state to help us as well. So right now it's their time in the bucket, for lack of a better word, and they're really struggling. And there's a lot of significant events going on up there. And to that, obviously maintaining the standard of response, or the capabilities that we have here within the city of Long Beach as well as LA County, we will continue to do that, and we will call back firefighters to provide that additional staffing and those resources to provide the level of service that the community is accustomed to here in the city. That said, we will also deploy based on an immediate need or an imminent threat to homes or structures. We will deploy resources right from the get-go to these areas in need. And we will utilize on-duty resources to accommodate that and to facilitate that. So we'll get those resources en route as quickly as possible to provide those additional resources. So in the process, we continue to backfill and call back our firefighters that are off duty to support and provide additional resources to remain here in the city. So there's multiple fronts to that, but I can tell you that the beauty of the statewide master mutual aid system, it has become a model for the entire country, what we do here in the state of California, and it's very successful and very effective. And I'm going to tell you right now, it is all hands up in Northern California right now. California Office of Emergency Services, or CalOES, is a coordinating body for those resources, and they have made numerous requests for what we call overhead staff. That are individuals that are trained specifically in certain skill sets to go and provide additional support and assistance, as well as strike teams which are our fire engines and our resources with the corresponding staffing to go up and provide additional support and assistance. And LA County, to Ron's point, is one of our major coordinating bodies for Region 1, which is this region for us. And LA County has obviously been a leader in that process for the master mutual aid system throughout the state.
So, Captain Ron, you sending a lot of people up north, then, hey?
Yeah, and we've done it before, but we've sent several strike teams up there to help out and assist, along with some overhead, our battalion chiefs and some of our trainees. So we're needed up there. They've got a lot of fires going on, a lot of activities. They've lost a lot of structures.
They said 500.
And they've even had some fatalities, unfortunate. So we've been busy down here in LA County and throughout the region in Southern California as well. So we're keeping our resources ready. We're keeping an eye on our men and women who are out there ready to go. We've had some extreme heat this last week, and several days is still ahead of us too. So all the vegetation is dry, and opportunities for those fires to start are greater than ever.
All right. Yeah. I was reading where, when they have wildfires in the state of California, they also rely on the people that have been incarcerated. They train them to, fight these wildfires. But because they've been releasing prisoners, and also because of the pandemic, there was something I was reading saying there's a shortage of bodies, going out there to fight the fires. Have you guys heard that same thing?
Well, we know that to be true. We've diminished some of the resources as far as some of the inmates, but we're able to manage. That was an additional resource, if you will. But with our personnel and our staffing and our aircraft and our paid camps, we're definitely able to handle anything that comes our way.
Captain Ron said, "Yeah, we got this." All right, good job. Chin, it looks like you're online with us now. Good morning.
I had to do it the other way. I had to come up through my phone.
Ah, okay. Well, there you go. All right. So look, let's rewind back. You were talking about Cert. Tell us a little bit about that. Give us a short version. What is Cert?
I think Ron did a really good job of laying it out for me. So always thanks. But basically what it does is it teaches us to be not first responders. We're not replacements for those guys, but we can fill in the gaps while those first responders are not available. We take care of things such as basic first aid, basic search and rescue, basic size up of situations after a major disaster. We also work with our neighbors to find out who's well and who's not. So we're a really great aid in the community. And I gotta say, and I think Ron said it a little bit earlier, our people, some of them are very, very highly skilled. For non-professional responders, very highly skilled folks. And all of us are volunteers. We're all your neighbors in the community. That is the most critical thing, is that we are your neighbors.
All right. So Jake, you bring together the Cert people in the city of Long Beach, and now somebody here from Long Beach might say, "Hey man, I've never heard of that before." How do they become a Cert team member?
Well, yeah, I think this is the great thing about. So I've had the opportunity to work with everyone that you're seeing on the camera right now, as far as the Cert goes, and Cert is a national system. Obviously we talked about it. It starts in Los Angeles City Fire Department with Frank Borman, and it has basically sanctioned by FEMA nationally now. So it's delivered and managed at the local level. And it's typically sponsored by a sponsoring agency. For instance, in Los Angeles County would be LA County Fire. In Long Beach, it's Long Beach Fire. LA City, it's Los Angeles City Fire Department. And so what you see is that you see the training coordinated by that local jurisdiction. Now, I will tell you, COVID has changed a lot of the dynamics as it relates to our in-person delivery. This class typically is anywhere from roughly about 20 to 24 hours, depending upon what agency and jurisdiction you go to. But it's basically, it consists of multiple modules. To Chin's point, we talked about search and rescue, disaster preparedness, fire safety. We talked about medical skills, disaster psychology. I mean, there are multiple elements to the actual basic training. Once the individual goes through the basic training, then they become a member of the CERT program. And there's additional training. I know LA City has a great example of additional training where they get to be trained in cooling stations and working on their rehabilitation units or the rehab units. So really, it's jurisdictionally driven. But the point is a basic curriculum is a basic curriculum. And then whether you go to Los Angeles County or LA City or Long Beach, you're going to get the same basic training. And that's the one that's sanctioned by FEMA. Now, that said, COVID has changed a little bit of that. And so we're not doing the in-person deliveries right now as far as the basic training goes, because we're trying to limit potentially, the transmission or community spread of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. That said, the University of Utah came out with an online hybrid learning program that is being rolled out throughout the state during September as National Preparedness Month, and the local jurisdictions will help facilitate and coordinate that. Specifically in Long Beach, that will happen here, where you'll start to see these modules being delivered virtually. And then what will end up happening is, after a lot of this stuff with COVID is past us and we're back to meeting in person, we will be doing skill stations or skills training that will be in addition to the basic hybrid learning that went on online. So the skills training is still an important part of CERT, because CERT is very much a hands-on training. But the hybrid learning program that's designed by the University of Utah is designed to augment and provide a student with the opportunity on their own time to go out and really kind of take the classroom-based learning and address that at home. So that will help us do some additional outreach to get some people that may not necessarily be able to get into the full 24-hour program, for lack of a better word, at least in the city of Long Beach. But at least they're going to be able to get some great information from the hybrid learning program that's going to give them the exposure. And like I said in the very beginning, a lot of this is about knowledge. If you do nothing else but you take a few modules of the hybrid learning and say, this isn't for me, the point is you still have additional training and education that will be helpful to your friends and your families and your neighbors. So it's little things. And that's why I really, every time I talk about preparedness to the community, there's this perception out there that you have to go out and do all this training and go spend all this money to buy this amazing go bag. And yeah, that's great if you have the resources to do that. But the simple conversations about having an out-of-state contact to know if something were to happen and we need to make a phone call. Obviously, if the impact happens in the city of Long Beach, the infrastructure is going to be so impacted that people aren't going to be able to call each other. So if you get one message or one text message that gets out, send it to your out-of-state contact. And that out-of-state contact will then coordinate and basically accumulate all the resources, all the check-ins from all the families, say everyone's good. And the likelihood from them transmitting a message back to you is much greater than everyone trying to communicate to each other. But you don't know your out-of-state contact unless you have that conversation now. So those are those little things that we talk about, saying those are little small things that we think about in the overall. It doesn't cost any money, but it starts with a conversation. The safe meeting place, the out-of-state contact, right? Making sure that you have these small little, like a go bag. A go bag doesn't need to be extensive. I mean, it can be some documents like copies of insurance, important papers, photos of the family and pets, cash, small bills, right? We talk about small bills increments, and that might be 1s and 5s, and we want to limit that. We don't want 20s, because if you need some water and you're buying water, guess what? They're not going to give you change. So that water costs you $20. So the idea of having these little things like a map or medication list, a list of all your prescriptions, other important medical information, right? These are all things that don't take a lot of resources, but can make a significant difference when disaster strikes. And we talk about a wallet, purse and keys, phone and charger, medicine, a portable light, flashlight, first aid supplies. These are a portable computer. These are things that are big deals when you need them. And you're not going to have a lot of time to grab this stuff when you're potentially when a wind-driven fire is encroaching upon your community. You need to get out and get out quickly. That's why it's important to have these things set aside when you're anticipating. And we talked about this, about being prepared. Being prepared are simple steps that start now, today, not tomorrow, because tomorrow may be too late. And that's really what this was about today on the conversation.
That's very interesting. You talk about the go bag, and I'm so glad about that. We prepared a video of Chin and I, where Chin has gone through a go bag and actually shows everyone what he recommends to be inside of there. And the thing about the money is a pretty interesting you never really think about that. You might go in with a 20 or a 50 or $100 bill, and they're not going to have change. You're right. That little booger might cost you $100, if that's what you're doing. We're going to post that video. We were going to try to play it here on Coffee Conversations, but there's so much going on. We are going to post it on our Facebook page, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. You guys know where it is. You're going to see it. It's about 10 minutes long, but it is very, very informative. And Chin is taking us through that whole go bag situation so that you might be prepared just in the case that it gets real crazy out here. Captain.
Oh, you still there?
Yeah, it looks like we lost him a little bit there.
Uh-oh. Maybe he went out for coffee. Greg, you there?
We lost the host.
Go ahead.
Well,
Would you agree? Yeah.
Okay, I missed that part. You froze up there on the transmission.
Okay, I wanted to get your comments on the importance of having a go bag in the household.
Yeah, it's important to have it. Absolutely have it. Absolutely know where it's at. Be prepared. I mean, the whole platform and the topic today of preparedness is important. We've all been doing this a long time, but if we can't reach the people, if we're not, that public education is not there, and we don't send them a place to go that clearly lays that out. Visit the websites of all these agencies. LA County is fire.lacounty.gov. Visit that, walk through it, get familiar with it, see everything that we've got laid out for survival preparedness and also for wildland preparedness. It's all laid out, but we got to get the people to go to it, utilize it, set it up, have that go bag, and be ready. Take it serious.
Yeah, very much so. It's
Greg,
so
Greg, can I add something?
Go ahead, Chin.
Greg, I wanted to add something. When we were filming yesterday, I thought about this after you left. Mm-hmm. One, I want to let everybody know, when we talk about a go bag in particular, you don't necessarily have to have everything top line. If you have a modest budget, you can find a lot of items, including your bag, at places like the dollar store, the Dollar Tree, 99-cent. Just put whatever you have together, as long as it works, as long as you are checking everything periodically. It doesn't matter where you get it, because I know sometimes it puts off people because they think they have to spend a lot of money. They don't necessarily have to do that. And I always like to say it's like bad credit. It's never too late to change your bad credit. Start putting things together. Put it together now, as Jake says. And, you can do it modestly. So I want to make sure that message is out there.
All right. Modesty. You don't have to go out and spend a lot of money. I think earlier we even mentioned that, but certainly have something ready. You don't want to be stranded out here without the basic supplies. And like I said, we'll have that video posted up on Coffee Conversations with Greg J, so that you can see all the little things that we have going on in there. Now, guys, I want to ask each and every one of you, and I've asked a few since we've been doing Coffee Conversation. I've asked this questions of a number of people in key positions. Okay, so flashback to the day that we got locked down. I happen to be in the LA County Hall of Administration downtown Los Angeles on a totally another, event. And all of a sudden, the mayor of LA, the county supervisors, all these people walk into the room and they just have this ginormous press conference, and boom, we're locked down. You guys always ready for, Johnny on the spot for, disasters and situations. What did you all think when you got the word, okay, pandemic is hitting and hitting us hard? Could you see it coming, or was it like an alert for you? How did it hit you? Describe that for the people.
Well, I think, we're first responders, so we're always in that mode of responding and being there and being helpful. It took a couple of days for it to sink in to me that we were in a kind of a lockdown situation, or things are going to be different. Being essential or first responders, you step up to the plate and you're ready to go. But took a few days for me to realize, okay, this is going to be serious, and this is going to be for the long haul.
How about you there, Jake? How about you? You look
You
like
know,
a guy who's like already ready for anything. I'm he ready to go fight the fire now.
yeah, yeah, I have a very unique position in the city of Long Beach. So I'm also their public information officer. So I do all their community outreach. And in addition to running the Cert program, I also do our community engagement. And so we had activated what we call a Joint Information Center, or a JIC, for the city of Long Beach. And that JIC was composed or comprised of all different our city departments in the city. So we had the communicators from every single city department, including the city manager's office, public works, the health department, the police department, the fire department. We were all there working in this Joint Information Center. We had activated what we call the incident management team, which is also representatives of the health department, the fire department, the police department. And when we had started to see jurisdictions that were being impacted by it, we really kicked into full gear. There was a fire department in Northern California that had multiple firefighters that were impacted and tested positive for COVID-19, and basically essentially took a whole station out very early on into this situation. We immediately started reaching out to other jurisdictions. Up in Washington State was another one. If you remember, the first breakouts that we had of COVID-19 were up in the Washington area. We reached out to those jurisdictions to say, what were they doing? How were they dealing with the impact, and then how were they protecting their responders? The last thing we wanted to do was get the community to a place where they were concerned about calling 911 and having firefighters come into their house that could potentially have been infected. And so we wanted to maintain the integrity of the response capabilities as well, because we really wanted to make sure that we were supporting the community and putting to bed those concerns about what happens if I call 911, who's going to come, and are they going to be sick? And obviously, based on the nature of our job, we have a higher incidence of exposure because we're dealing with people that are sick. That's why they're calling 911. So immediately we went into identifying how we were going to protect our responders and how we were going to outfit them in the appropriate personal protective equipment. And at that point in time, it was the whole world was struggling to find personal protective equipment. And so those resources were very, very reduced. But fortunately, we had contingency plans. And this gets back to preparedness. We had stockpiles of personal protective equipment that were ready to be utilized for just a situation like this. And so even though we talk about pandemics, or we really weren't thinking about a pandemic, we knew that we were ready for a disaster, right? Whether it be personal protective equipment, or whether it be supplies of food and water, or other types of essential items. We have that ready to go. And we knew that we needed to activate those resources to make sure that we could utilize that for the community. So we did that. And I think that it also was about communicating that message to the citizens of Long Beach. And so we created a lot of videos. We talked about what they could anticipate seeing. I mean, I remember I stood in all of our PPE and did an informational video about what you were going to expect to see in your communities when you call 911. You're going to see firefighters getting off the fire engines in this personal protective equipment. They look like they're responding to the zombie apocalypse, but we're doing that not only to protect you, but to protect us. So this is the way that you're going to see us in the community. And that doesn't mean that the person's positive for COVID-19 at your next door neighbor's house. It means that we're in an abundance of caution. We're taking these steps to make sure that we're minimizing the spread. Now, we did have community spread, and early on we had community spread. So we and working in close partnership with the health department, we initially started communicating the health orders that put everyone basically on lockdown, for lack of a better word. We had the safer at home health orders. But it was about how we communicated that information to the community that became essential to the success of what that really looked like. And I think that every jurisdiction was in the same boat. And we learned from every jurisdiction that was around us how they were handling those situations, so we could really create a comprehensive response and approach to this that really tried to minimize the fears, because everyone was scared. Everyone was scared about, what is this going to look like to me and my family? And we didn't know a lot early on. And I think we still are learning about what are some of those potential risks. But the idea was that we knew that if we could promote physical distancing and really promote people staying at home, that we could protect the vulnerable populations and reduce the spread of COVID-19. And unfortunately, we're still dealing with that. And I know people are tired. I know people are exhausted, and people want to get back to some sense of normalcy, but we're just continuing to move down that path to getting to that point where we can really return to some sense of normalcy. But I'm going to tell you right now, it will be a new normal when we get there, because things have changed dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Chin, what do you think? What was it like for you? Chin?
For me, it's a little
Yeah.
bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys, Jake and Ron, they're first responders. They're on the front line. For us, it was more of a matter of looking at our immediate neighborhoods. Going with the Cert credo, we started looking at the welfare of our families first, ourselves, our families, and then we started working in our communities. What do I mean working in communities? There were things we could do. First of all, we were not short of our first responders. They were still in play. But what we have done and what we continue to do is to keep an eye on our neighbors, especially our elder neighbors, our neighbors who may not be able to leave the houses for some reason. We've worked with them to find out what their needs are, whether to pick up needed medications, food, and everything like that. And we have made that happen throughout many of our neighborhoods here in LA where I am. So we're working at the lowest level, but it's still a very critical place. And wherever we can and we have the information, we put it out to the community. So don't think our role is not there, because we're there trained to do neighborhood, keeping ourselves safe, but yet still doing a service to everybody in the community and helping out people like Ron and Jake where we can.
You know, Jake, you said something here that struck a nerve for me, and you said, as we look in the future, man, you're right. It's not going to be the same, is it? This is like really, really something.
It is, and I think even in that sense, right, where you're starting to see a lot of outdoor dining start to occur, and you're starting to see things change. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think that's going to be a change that lasts potentially in perpetuity. People are actually leaning towards, I'd rather eat outside, and so you're going to start to see some of these things that become really institutionalized. You're going to see people washing their hands a lot more frequently because it's become part of the daily experience. You're going to see people and I think even the idea of even working remotely is changing. So we may even see business and industry change along those lines. We have seen a huge change in that just now, but what that looks like even after we have potentially some of these other things that we see the reduced numbers of community spread, or we talk about positivity rates. I think you're going to start to see as these different things, these different orders get lessened, right, and kind of get removed. I think you're still going to see the residuals of that even throughout our whole society. So I think this is all part of that process. It's a new normal, and we talk about resiliency, our ability to bounce back. And you'll see communities that have been impacted by disasters respond and bounce back. And we see this in communities that have been impacted by fires, right? The resiliency of communities is predicated on the response of the people in the community and how they handle that and how they're prepared. And preparedness increases your resiliency. So those are critical steps that we can do right now. And that's why the Lisos California campaign is focusing on those 5 points of preparedness, about talking about getting alerts and knowing what to do and making a plan to protect your people, getting to safety with the things that you need, just to stay safe when at home and you can't leave, and then obviously helping friends and neighbors get ready. And the Cert program is really predicated on the fact of helping friends and neighbors get ready. And that's the basis of the Cert program, is doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the shortest amount of time. And I think that's why that's why the Cert program resonates with so many.
You know, Captain Ron, now, you know, we're talking about Long Beach here. The restaurants have gone to outside eat dining and all of that, which actually kind of cool in some areas when you drive around. Now, in other areas of LA County, do you see, you know, these cities and regions where you're responsible, do you see other cities in this region adopting that whole outdoor dining initiative?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you that outdoor dining and congregating outside actually starts in the firehouse. So we've had to change how we do business. Just our day-to-day, the kitchen lineup, having everybody sitting together. Those days have changed. Guys are eating in 2 different shifts. We're having lineups or conducting lineups out on the apparatus floor near the engines in the trucks, or even out back in the parking lot, just to adhere to that so we can have that physical distancing. You're seeing guys in the station having to wear masks. You'll see the engines and guys on engines riding around with masks on. So that started in the station, and I know everybody's really concerned about COVID and what happens when first responders show up, or what happens on a large-scale brush fire. We've been getting hit with that a lot. how we handle ourselves at base camp, at our command post. So that starts in the firehouse and that spills out. So yeah, I'm definitely seeing that not only at local businesses or restaurants, but we're seeing it at a firehouse.
Yeah, this is really interesting, and to you guys' point, there have been, I guess the regulations that they've put forth to manage this outdoor dining in the in the restaurant business, it's set to expire soon. But now you're beginning to hear restaurant owners say, "Hey, you know what? No, you need to keep this thing in place indefinitely because it's good for business. We know we're kind of surviving here. We're doing a little better, but people, like you say, people are getting used to dining outside, this new normal of going to your favorite restaurant, and you are probably going to be seated, out on the sidewalk. They've taken over whole entire lanes of the road there to accommodate seating and all of that. And I feel like it's actually kind of cool, but I want to know what we're going to do, like when it begins to rain and all, weather changes and all that. It's all great in the summertime, but I'm sure, we'll figure it out. But these are the new normals that we're faced with. As far as, work, working from the house now, the Zoom meeting is really the king now, and that's how people are getting together, and that, I guess, reduces contact between people. Now, let me ask you guys a practical question. Are you seeing more fires or incidents while we're locked down? Are people burning up their grease on the stove, or what's going on?
Yeah, we're seeing an uptick because you got more people at home and people are cooking, and you got more kids at home. So we're seeing an increase in cooking fires and injuries. We had a program where we addressed that, having access to information and understanding safety and how being home has its own challenges and pose safety issues.
All right, Jake, what about in the beautiful city of Long Beach? You seeing an uptick?
Yeah, it's interesting. We also, not only, it depends on the type of calls, I think, is what we're really seeing. Some people are really not calling. We had a decrease in actual medical responses because people, I think, were concerned about calling 911 initially. So I think that we've had, obviously, I think we're getting back to that normal now. It's a new normal, for lack of a better word, but I think that it's a fine balancing act. With people staying at home, we are seeing an increase in the sense that people are using their appliances and using their stoves and cooking more frequently. So there are going to be higher incidents of those types of things. But it gets back to the messaging. It gets back to the preparedness messaging. It gets back to the basic fire safety messaging, to make sure that we talk. It's simple things. We talk about making sure that if you have a fire on your range at home, like don't put water on a flammable liquid fire. Right, it'll make it worse. So we talk about having the baking soda, not baking powder, but baking soda, right? To make sure that you can sprinkle that on, or you can cover the lid of the pot with the lid. It reduces the oxygen. We talk about even in the Cert class, we get into the fire triangle and some basic science about that, and if we cover a fire on a flammable liquid, we're removing the oxygen, which is one side of the triangle, and if you remove oxygen or you remove heat or you move the fuel, the fire is going to go out. The same principles apply on a fire in the brush. You see the hand crews out there scraping down to the bare earth, or the bulldozer scraping down to the bare earth. They're basically, in a sense, removing fuel. And so eventually the fire will get up to that line where there's no more fuel and it will stop. So we talk about that in the Cert class a little bit about the fire triangle, and that's the same principles apply even at home. About removing oxygen or cooling a fire by putting water on it, depending upon what class of fire it is. So this Cert class is really enlightening for a lot of people. Fire is not just necessarily fire, right? There's different classifications of fire. We have a Class A fire, which is just ordinary wood, paper, and trash. A Class B fire, which is flammable liquid. Class C fire, which is energized electrical, where if you take the plug out of the power, oftentimes it becomes a Class A fire. So but each of those fires have different extinguishing agents that are the appropriate agent to put that fire out. And you want to make sure that you're not utilizing the wrong extinguishing agent, like I said, with water on a flammable liquid fire, which may make it worse. So these are those things that it's about knowledge. And that gets back to the very thing we started in the very, very beginning of this conversation, is that knowledge is power in this world. Preparedness starts small. It's little small things, but it can make a big difference if those steps are put in place. And I think that's really what this is about today. And that's the message that I really want to make sure all the viewers are hearing and the listeners today are hearing, is that it starts today. Preparedness is an effort that starts today, and it starts with a conversation. Take the steps on ready.gov, take the steps on listoscalifornia.org, and really start incorporating these into your daily conversation. Help practice a drill with your kids. I've been involved with scouts, with these Cub Scouts, and you get them at home and you say, okay, here's the smoke alarm goes off. I can tell you, a lot of these kids have never even heard a smoke alarm go off. And so if all of a sudden a smoke alarm goes off and they don't know what that sound is and they don't know what to do, they're one step behind. So the goal is we want to teach them. Here's a smoke alarm. If your door's closed, you feel the door for heat. If the door's hot, you leave the door closed, right? Go to a window. If the door is cool, open the door. If you see smoke, get down to the ground and crawl out. Go to the front door, crawl out to the closest door, and go to your safe meeting place. And we practice that with these kids. We practice that and they go out to this tree in the front of the house, and this is where they glue their little backs to until the family gets out there. And the reason for that is because if we don't practice it, we're not going to ingrain it. And a conversation is just one thing, but practicing really drives that home. That's why we do, when the kids are in school, that's why they have the fire drills at school. So they practice going out onto the lawn and into the playground and lining up and making sure they take roll to make sure everyone's safe and accounted for. But the more that we can practice these things, the more prepared people are going to be. And so I think that's really an important part of this conversation. And I can tell you right now, I use this as an example. We talked about listoscalifornia.org. I also work with another nonprofit. We're actually giving out free preparedness bottles if people take a little quiz online. It's not a big deal, but if you want to go on there, it's also www.itema.org/2020. And there's a little quiz there. And if you take the quiz on these 5 steps of preparedness that I've talked to you about as well, we'll even send you a free preparedness bottle that's being paid for by that Listos California campaign. So we're really trying to push the message out. The goal is to hit over 1 million people with this preparedness message under the California for All Listos California campaign. And again, the city of Long Beach is participating in that. Multiple nonprofit organizations are participating in that. Los Angeles County and Los Angeles City Fire Department are participating in that. It is widespread throughout the state. And last numbers I saw were about 900,000 people that have been connected to with this Listos California campaign already. And we've still got a couple months left of the campaign. So we encourage you to be a part of this statewide effort and be ready, get prepared, and make a difference in your community today.
All right. That's awesome stuff. I really, really do appreciate you guys. We're approaching the end of our time together, but I want to ask each of you to give me a story. So in your time, first of all, Captain Ron, you said 28 years. You only look about 28 years old. So you was born in the fire department there is what I see. But listen, in your time on the LA County Fire Department, what is the most, what incident that you responded to sticks in your heart that just makes you say, dang, I remember when?
Wow. Well, I was working in Hollywood at the time, Station 8. We got a structure fire early one morning with LA City, right above about 2 blocks above our jurisdiction, above the station. And we got there and LA City was on one side initiating fire attack. We went around the backside. There was a guy hanging out of the building up on the 3rd level. So we were able to pull in with the truck company, get out, get a ladder to him, get him down. We hear screaming along the very back. So we cut the fence, went back there, and there's a lady hanging out of the 2nd story window with smoke and fire blowing behind her. So we laddered that, got her down, got her husband down, and then they kept pointing up top like there's more people. We look up and it was the dog, the pit bull. So I go up and bring him down, and all this happened. The lady's pregnant, the dog, all this happened in a matter of about 5 to 7 minutes, just sequential. And it was just one of those calls that you go, wow, this is, we were doing it on this one. So yeah, that one stands out.
Okay, Jake, what about you?
Well, there's obviously all those calls. I mean, I've been with Long Beach Fire for 20 years here, and I was with another jurisdiction, Orange County Fire, 9 years before. But I came to Long Beach as what they call a paid call firefighter. And during that time, and this is when I talk about your experience, I lived in Laguna Beach when the Laguna firestorms happened, and this was in the early 90s. And I saw my whole community destroyed. And I not only was I was a new firefighter on the fire engine then. We were assigned to take care of certain things in our community. But when I lived in a place called El Moro, and it was, and I remember very vividly hearing on the radio that we're losing a lot of the homes in El Moro. And I thought to myself, I'm going to have nothing left. And I remember very vividly going through that process of understanding that the grieving that goes on in a community after a large catastrophic event. And in the case of a fire, you are exposed to it every day, even after the fire's gone, because you still have the smoke in the air. You drive into your community, and there are literally, it's a level. There's nothing left except just rubble on concrete pads. And to experience that firsthand, it really gave me empathy to be able to understand what communities go through from my experience. And so I really, truly, the importance of preparedness and understanding that what it might feel like. Fortunately, I didn't lose my home. I was spared, but it was close. It came within 20 feet of my home. And so I remember that very clearly. Even though it was in the early 90s, I still remember it like it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I remember that smell. I remember that sense of that despair and watching people grieve in front of their homes where they've lost everything. And I think that those are the realities of the catastrophic impact on communities. But when it boils down to it, it's also about life, because people will rebuild. And the idea is that if you take steps now, right, prepare to get yourself and your family out to safe places, you're going to be there to rebuild, and it's going to be okay. It may be very difficult, and it is very challenging, and it's very emotional, and it is and that's why we really get into the disaster psychology component in Cert, because it is a huge impact on people and the community. The goal is, though, we've got to save lives. And if we have these alerts, we do all these things about these 5 points of preparedness, the goal is to save lives. And if we can do that, then we're all successful. And yes, we will rebuild, we will recover, we will return back to some sense of a new normal. Even the folks in New Orleans during Katrina, right, it devastated their community. But there's a new normal in New Orleans right now. They have created and established a new normal. And that's the beauty of our communities. Right? We can bounce back. We can recover. We are resilient. We were resilient by nature. And so I think that's the goal. Is when I look back at my personal experience as a firefighter, although that was a very difficult and traumatic time in my personal life, it gave me the ability to be really more empathetic to understanding the impact on people during a disaster. So I think that's really one of those take-home points for me throughout my career.
All right, Chin, what about you? What is the most impactful Cert story that you can share with the people?
You know, the best story I can think of happened back in April. It was, I think it was April 20th when we had a relatively small quake take place here in Los Angeles. It was centered in Windsor Hills. Took place just a little after midnight. I felt the quake here in Mid-City, and, I rolled out of bed and I thought to myself, I said, well, I wonder what our team is doing. You do a lot of training to a lot of neighborhoods, and you put in a lot of protocols. You say, here's what you should be doing after a quake like that. I didn't expect a lot to happen, but here at my home, I actually have a area repeater that we use for two-way radio communications. And just after midnight, about 10 or maybe about 12:15, the repeater started to light up. Our areas, Lamert Park, South Robertson, Miracle Mile, even Hollywood, they were starting to report in. Even though this was what we considered a relatively small event, our guys were following a protocol that we took out there and talked to them and said, hey, here's what you do after an earthquake. Check yourselves, check your families, check your homes, check your communities. And each of the communications I was getting on the radio that night, none by phone, even though phone service, internet service was still around, these guys got up and got on their two-way radios, and they reported in the status of their families, what they were seeing in their communities, and they just did everything by the book. And I think that really did a lot for me, because a lot of times when you teach Cert, and I think Jake can attest to this, sometimes other people you teach Cert to, you may never see them again, or they don't understand, or their eyes just glaze over. This was that one time that always reminded me that they are listening, they do understand, and they know how to make things happen on the neighborhood level when they need to. That was my favorite moment, and it also took place in the backdrop of COVID-19 as well. So that was a very big moment for me. Different from the other guys, but nonetheless a big moment for me.
Well, I will say that each of you has an essential part to the fabric of our community. And I'm just really enjoying this conversation with you this morning. We've shared some exceptional information. We're coming to the end of our time here, but I just want to publicly, first of all, thank each and every one of you for your service, for keeping us safe out here. I mean, you can see everybody that, it is a critical link, with community. It's your next door neighbor is a Cert, and ready to help in the event of a disaster. And then you have these highly skilled professionals who are out there day in and day out saving lives. That's a really, really, and keeping the training going so that they can constantly be at the ready if we need them and when we need them. And I just thank you guys so much for your service, each and every one of you. I will share with you this, but as we go out, my mom worked in the San Diego Fire Department, and she worked in the purchasing department. So when I was a kid and the fire trucks would be coming down the street, with their sirens wailing and everything, she could tell us the year, how many gallons it took, what size the engine. That was what, when I was a little boy, that was what she would say. Oh, that's a Seagrave, and she would just rattle off all of the statistics of that, because she was in there making the purchases on behalf of the city. That's a really good thing. And lastly, Jake and Captain Ron, I just want to let you know I need to drive one of them hook and ladders. I want to sit up there in the back cab and see what that's like.
That's a blast. Jake, you want to take him first and share the home team. You get him around there first, and then we'll spin him around LA County.
Yeah, that's what's up. You know what? I ask the guys every time I see them, they're making their grocery runs. I say, "Hey, man, can I drive?" So that's what's up.
That's a whole nother skill set, because your mindset has to be totally the opposite way of your turning.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, a lot of fun, but you gotta have your head on the swivel and be paying attention.
Yeah, there's a smaller vehicle. I was in the Marine Corps and I worked on fighter jets, and there was a support vehicle that you had to go to like 3 weeks of training, because exactly what you said. It's the opposite, right? It was called a SAT. Oh, yeah. It was called a SAT loader, and this is how we loaded the weapons onto the fighter jets. But that booger, you had to turn left to go right. Yes, sir. All right. Exactly. Thank you guys so much for coming to Coffee Conversations with Greg J. I would like to just let you know, too, I want to keep in contact with each and every one of you and invite you to come on to this show. We did birth this out of here. Now, Jake, just so you know, I moved to Long Beach not too long ago, a couple years ago and everything. And I am formed a media company, and we have a 24-hour online radio station called beachcityradio.com. We have this show and a couple of others that are live streamed. And this one here is about sharing information to our community from a global perspective. But because our home base is here in Long Beach, we touch on the city and all that. So if you ever have information that you need for the people to get out, both you and Captain Ron, just ring me up and let's get on here and share with the people the vital information. This information is saving lives. And I think what I've taking away from this conversation this morning is that we are resilient, everybody. We're going through a lot right now, man. We got the COVID-19. It's, you just never know what's going to happen. There's protest and injustice, and just a pivotal part of life is really on our neck right now here in these United States. And I would just like for you all to know that there's information out there to keep you safe. There's upstanding folks like Captain Ron and Brother Jake there. They're keeping us safe. I feel safe already with talking to these guys this morning. People like Brother Chin, who are our homies, our next door neighbors who have volunteered, taking the time to take this critical training. So in the event of disaster or craziness or this thing where does it ever fall apart, these guys are here for us, with us, and they're to be commended. And the information, the vehicle for you, Jake, the vehicle for you, Ron, the vehicle for you, Chin, to share your information is right here. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. All right. Well, that's it, y'all. Tomorrow we're going to have a special edition. That's they're celebrating the March on Washington, the 57th anniversary, and we're going to reach out to some of our activist friends who are in Washington, D.C., try to see what's going on there as we stand on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and contemplate and advocate for rights, for social justice in such a time as this. We're going to take a look-see from our friends who are on the ground over there in D.C. That's a special edition Coffee Conversations with Greg J. You guys can check us out, share, like, do all of those things. You can see this as a repeat on Coffee Conversations with Greg J and on beachcityradio.com. And always, everybody, love one another. Love one another. Love one another. Peace and blessings.